Greetings. Welcome to another story time. Today is Sunday, April the 5th, and today is day 21 of me bringing story to you. I hope everyone is having a blessed day. Praying for everyone's health and safety. And I'm happy to be here to share story with you again today. So whatever you're doing, stop and join me for this story today. No, I'm just joking. But I do love to share stories with you, and I have two great stories to share today as well. Hi, Mildred. So let's begin. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine in the stories that I share every day. Hey, Val and Olivia, waving at you too. So welcome to two stories today. I'm going to read in tribute to grandmothers. I am a grandmother. I'm called Grammy, and I have 11 grandchildren, 7 boys, 7 grandsons, and 4 granddaughters. And so I'm going to share two stories today. The first one is called Grandmama's Joy, and it's by one of my favorite authors, Eloise Greenfield. This is an old book that my daughter loved when she was little. Let me see, when was it copyrighted? Wow, it doesn't even say. That's interesting. At any rate, Grandmama's Joy. And the color of these illustrations is called sepia, for those boys and girls that may not know. Okay, hi, Aunt Carol. Grandmama's Joy. Her grandmama was sad, and Rhonda didn't know why. It wasn't one of those rainy, gray days that sometimes made Grandmama so quiet. It was a gold and blue day. People were taking their time going places in the sunshine, and Rondi could see all the way to the high school. But still, Grandmama was sad, taking old clothes out of the closet and stuffing them into a big box. Rondi knew just what to do to make her laugh. She went to her room and put on the long earrings Mrs. Bennet had given her to play with, and she tied the plaid tablecloth with the burn hole in it around her waist. Then she rolled up a piece of newspaper and took it with her to Grandmama's room, but she didn't go in. She peeked around the door. "Sit down, Grandmama," she said. "I've got a surprise for you." "Oh, honey," Grandmama said with a sigh in her voice. "Grandmama doesn't have time for a show today." "It's just a little show," Rondi said. "It won't take but a minute. Please." She took her grandmama's arm and pulled her toward the bed and made her sit down. "Well, all right," Grandmama said, trying to smile. Rondi put her newspaper microphone up to her mouth and began to sing. She shook her shoulders and her head and walked up and down the way she had seen singers do on television. And she finished with her eyes closed and one arm stuck up and about. Actually, stuck up and out. But Grandmama wasn't a good audience today. She laughed and clapped, but it wasn't a real laugh because the lines between her eyebrows never went away. And when Rondi started out of the room and turned back to look, Grandmama was still sitting on the bed with a faraway look in her eyes. By the time Rondi had put her newspaper away and taken off her earrings and her tablecloth, Grandmama was cleaning out the closet again. "I'm going outside, Grandmama," Rondi said. "All right," Grandmama answered, "but don't go away now." Rondi walked down the street to the house with the baby rose bush beside the porch and rang the bell. She could hear Mrs. Bennet's footsteps coming fast down the door. Mrs. Bennet hurried everywhere, even when she wasn't in a hurry. "Come on in," she said, pulling Rondi inside. "Me and Tippy was just watching the ball game." Tippy meowed and rubbed his fur against Rondi's leg, but she didn't have time to pick him up right then. "Miss Bennet," she said, "can you call up my grandmama?" "Melissa ain't sick, is she?" Mrs. Bennet asked, rushing to the phone. "No, she's just sad," Rondi said. "Oh." Mrs. Bennet stood still for a moment with her hand on the phone. Then she dialed and held the phone to her ear for a long time before she hung up. "I guess she don't feel like talking right now, Rondi," Miss Bennet said. "But I'll call her again later on. Here?" "Do you know why she's sad?" Rondi asked. Mrs. Bennet nodded her head. "Your grandmama's going to tell you all about it," she said. "But don't you worry now. Everything's going to be all right." She and Tippy walked Rondi to the door. Rondi went out the back door and walked slowly down the alley to her backyard. It was still a golden blue day, but it didn't matter. It didn't matter that the sun was shining if it didn't make her grandmama happy. She looked around in the yard for something pretty. Grandmama liked pretty things. Rondi looked for a feather or a buttercup or a little twig with bumps on it. Then over near the zinnias that she had helped plant, she saw a little black stone with sparkly silver specks in it, and she picked it up and took it in the house. She found her grandmama in the kitchen drinking a cup of peppermint tea. "I got something pretty for you, Grandmama," she said. "It sparkles if you put it in the sun." Her grandmama held the stone in her hand. "Where'd you get such a pretty stone?" she asked. "I got it in our yard," Rondi said. "There's a whole lot of pretty things in our yard." Grandmama made a short, jerky humming sound and looked quickly down into her cup. She drew her face together tight, but she couldn't hold it. She laid the stone on the table and started to cry. Rondi didn't know what to do. She was the one who usually cried, and Grandmama always knew what to do. But she had never seen Grandmama cry before, not really cry, with hard sounds and tears that left her eyes. So Rondi just stood there a little bit scared and wanting to cry too, until Grandmama got quiet and reached for a paper napkin to wipe her face. "We have to leave our yard, Rondi," Grandmama said, crumbling the napkin in her lap. "We have to move. The rent here is too much for me now. I have to find us another place to live." "Is it far?" Rondi asked, thinking about missing her friends, but Grandmama didn't hear her. "I've been living in this house for a long time, since way back, long before you were born, and now—" She stopped talking and looked way past Rhonda's head at a way back time. Rondi could smell the peppermint from the teacup and feel the good kitchen feelings. She didn't want to live in another house either, and she didn't want to leave her friends and her school and Miss Bennet and Tippy and move to some place that might be far away. But she wasn't as worried as Grandmama was. Her grandmama had forgotten something, and Rondi had to make her remember. "Grandmama," she said, "tell me about when I came to live with you." Grandmama shook her head. "Not right now," she said. "Please," Rondi said, "I'll help you." She leaned on the table close to Grandmama. It was a rainy, gray day. Grandmama took a long breath in and out. "It was a rainy, gray day, and your mom and daddy went for a ride in the car. I was a little baby back then," Rondi said, "and I was in the car back in the back seat. And then the car slipped because the street was wet." Rondi saw her grandmama shiver and take another long breath, so she said the hard part fast. "And the car ran into a tree, and the policeman came and told you that mom and daddy had died, but I was in the hospital, and all I had was a tiny, bitty scratch on my face." Grandmama nodded. I went to the hospital to get you. She said, and you were lying in that white crib, and I couldn't hardly see you for the tears in my eyes. But you saw your grandmama, and you started kicking up a storm, trying so hard to talk, and I picked you up and just held you. Rondi leaned in closer now because they were getting to the best part. And I said to myself, Grandmama said, that's my joy. That's Grandmama's joy. Long as I got my joy, I'll be all right. Rondi waited for Grandmama to smile. She always smiled after she said the best part. But this time she didn't look as if she had heard herself say it. Now Rondi was worried. She touched her grandmama's arm. Grandmama, she said, am I still your joy? Oh, honey, yes, Grandmama said. She kissed Rondi's cheek. Will I still be your joy when we move? Grandmama looked at her then, really looked at her as if she hadn't seen her for a long time and was so glad to see her. Then she hugged her and put Rondi's head on her shoulder and patted her head and hugged her again. You'll always be my joy, she said. Rondi didn't have to lift her head and look at Grandmama's face to know that she was smiling a real smile and that the lines between her eyebrows had gone away. Besides, Rondi didn't want to lift her head. She liked it right where it was. She felt so happy in her grandmama's arms because as much as she was grandmama's joy, grandmama was her joy too. She squeezed her eyes shut and hugged her grandmama tight. And that's the end. And that's grandmama's joy. So, you see how even with a bad situation, this girl, her mommy and daddy died in a car accident, but she still had her wonderful grandmother to live with. So, whoever you live with, whether it's your mom, your dad, your grandmama, your aunt, your uncle, your cousin, your foster family, hopefully and prayerfully, you live with somebody that you bring joy to them and they bring joy to you. So, we try to create joy wherever we go. Okay? So let me acknowledge who's here. And it's hard for me to see. I see Aunt Carol. Ooh, I'm getting ready to close y'all out. I see Valerie and Olivia and Mildred. I see Sam. Oh, I done messed this up.